Welcome back to Recovering from Everything, a podcast for anyone who has ever had anything happen to them ever. A podcast for everyone who has ever had anything happen to them ever. Has it been that long that I forgot my own tagline? Anyways, so much has happened since I last recorded a podcast. I deliberately took some time away this summer because I really just wanted to enjoy summer, which for some of my listeners probably sounds insane, but my Canadian listeners get it. Our summers, especially in Ontario, are very brief. It's sort of like a fleeting event. We get about maybe 3.5 months of summer, of beach weather. I live in a beach town. So I've been riding my bike, going to the beach. We've only got a couple months of this. And then obviously we get our beautiful fall for about a month. And then we get winter for 19 months after. So you got to get it while the getting is good. And this was also the first year that my daughter was enrolled in any kind of like summer day camp, which meant she was home with me. And I had her working as kind of like a house assistant. She called it being my maid. But I was like, girl, you are barely contributing your portion. But naturally, her responsibilities evolved. And it took a little bit of adjustment, but she crushed it, and she can fully support her very expensive Starbucks habit. We also got to spend loads of time together, and she spent a lot of time with her friends. And so it's been really, really nice, but very different from my usual like work. So once she goes back to school in September, my during the days will be far more focused, and hopefully I will be cranking out more podcasts. Anyways, I've also been continuing to level out. I don't know if leveling out is even the word, but I've been continuing on my perimenopausal journey. And as some of you may know, I started hormone replacement therapy around, I don't know, it must have been like the beginning of April, something like that, April-ish. And since then, I've been a bit of a guinea pig, trying different levels of progesterone, estrogen, testosterone. I got off the testosterone fairly quickly, actually, because I don't know if you noticed, fairly high strung and aggressive as it is. So I didn't necessarily need rocket fuel in that situation, but getting everything balanced is taking time. It's taking patience, appointments, blood work, experimentation, and I haven't had a real night's sleep in like 3 months, which is wild, but I have managed to get my temperature regulated, which has been cool. Anyways, so again, guinea pig, I'm not expecting miracles. I'm still very early on in my journey, but I am feeling better, because in the winter months, it was dark. It's wild that women go through this and have gone through this, and it's just like, oh, just a part of life. Anywho, in all of my guinea pigging and experimentation, it has cost a lot of money. I'm an entrepreneur. I don't have health insurance covering any of this. Everything is out of pocket. And I am very happy to do it. Literally, take my money. I don't care what it takes. I want to feel better. I want to feel stable. I want my nervous system to rest. And I am willing to invest my time, my energy, and money into making that happen, because this is my health, my wellness. This is my body. This is the life that I have to live every day. And that brings me beautifully, or perhaps aggressively, into today's topic, why it is incredibly important to spend money, good money, on your health. Because women will spend money on the kids and the house and the dog and the vacations and the renovations and the groceries and the gifts and the alcohol. But when it's time to spend money, meaningful money, on meaningful support for us, suddenly we're like accountants, right? We're counting the freaking pennies. And today's episode might piss off a few people. And I just want to acknowledge that it's coming from a very privileged place. And my understanding is if I have the privilege to acknowledge it and to use it. And that is why I think all of us should be spending better money on our health. And sometimes being pissed off is the beginning of finally being honest with yourself. So today I want to talk about the absolutely fascinating way that women will spend money on alcohol for decades and decades and decades and decades and decades, and then suddenly become incredibly financially frugal when it's time to get help to change their relationship with alcohol, right? Suddenly we need to research. We need to like compare prices, see what insurance covers, download an $8 app, talk to my husband to think about it, make sure it's worth it, which is interesting because we did not require this same level of like financial due diligence when we were buying, the 8,000th bottle of wine in our lifetime, right? Nobody stood at the liquor store doing like a cost benefit analysis. Nobody pulled up the household budget and said like, before I buy these 2 bottles, let me calculate what this habit is costing me annually. Nobody said I should discuss this purchase with my husband. No, we bought the alcohol because in that moment we believed that we needed it. We needed the relief and we needed the transition between the day and the evening. And we needed something to shut our brains off. And we needed a reward after taking care of everybody else. We needed to feel different from how we felt because alcohol had become important and we found the money for it. That's what human beings do, right? We find money, time, and energy for the things we have decided are important. But when it comes to our own care, women, especially women, have been trained to ask, like, what is the least that I can spend, right? What is the smallest amount of support that I can get away with? What option will inconvenience people the least? How can I fix this cheaply and without having to make a sacrifice for myself, right? Am I going to tell you, sorry, and I'm going to tell you exactly what I told a woman recently, like, please stop being cheap with your health, especially when alcohol has already been receiving a healthy portion of your household budget. And this isn't only about money. Being cheap with your health can mean looking for the least expensive option, but it can also mean giving yourself the least amount of time and support and attention and care possible. Like, how can I fix this without actually dedicating any attention to myself? It means expecting yourself to reverse a 10, 20, 30-year pattern uh, with a 3 counseling appointment, right? An app. Or some like renewed determination on like a Monday morning. Like, it means saying things like, I'm going to cut back. I won't keep it in the house. I'll only drink on the weekends. I'll start fresh next week. This time I'm going to be stronger. And for a few days, like, those things might work and maybe feel hopeful and clear and think, okay, things are going to get better. But then something happens. Your husband says the wrong thing, your mother calls, your adult child needs something, you have a stressful appointment, you feel lonely, you feel angry, you have one of those days where you have to take care of 17 different people and nobody even asks how you're doing. And you think, I'll just have a couple sips just to like calm down. And there is nothing there to support you. There is no new ways of thinking. There is no community to support how you've been feeling, how burnt out you are, none of it. And so break the dam. And once that starts, you can't stop. And that isn't evidence that you're weak. It's just evidence. And you've heard me say this before. It's evidence that, like, I'll just try harder isn't like a solid plan. You remove the alcohol, you tried to limit it, but you didn't replace what the alcohol was doing for you. You didn't build another way to come down from the stress. You didn't learn what to do when your thoughts started racing. You didn't address the resentment, exhaustion, the loneliness, the anger, the self-abandonment underneath the drinking. You took away your most reliable coping mechanism, and then you expected yourself to just like carry on as usual, right? And that's not a plan. That is leaving yourself alone in a fight, and then blaming yourself when you lose. And every time that happens, it costs you something. It costs you self-trust. You say you're going to stop, and then you drink, and then you make another rule, and then you break it, and then you promise yourself Monday, and then by Wednesday, it's, you're back at it. And you stop trusting yourself, and you start to believe like what the evidence is showing you, right? Which is like, I'll never follow through. I have no discipline. I should have controlled this sooner. I did this to myself. I deserve whatever happens now. And a dangerous thought of like, well, I did this to myself, so like I have to deal with it. And I did this to myself. I should be suffering for this, right? No. Um, you are responsible for what you do next, and you're not required to punish yourself for what has already happened. There's a big difference between taking responsibility and sentencing yourself, over punishing yourself, and responsibility says, this is affecting my life and I'm going to respond appropriately. And shame says, this is affecting my life because I'm broken and I deserve these consequences. And shame rarely leads to better care. It usually leads women to like hide or minimize or delay, or attempt to repair a serious problem with the least support possible. And which brings me to another major pattern I see constantly is the woman who has spent years caring for everybody except herself, right? Aging parents, she's managing appointments, bills, she's organizing moves, she's raising children, raising a husband, helping in-laws, she's cleaning up messes. She's made herself useful to everyone. And because she is competent, right? Brilliant, high functioning, overachiever, everyone lets her just kind of run the show. And eventually, those crises settle down. She's an empty nester. People need her maybe less and less, right? The kids are grown, household is quieter, and suddenly this spotlight is on her health, her habits, her marriage, her loneliness, her drinking. And she says, now I can work on me. And I love that. I love that moment. But I also want to ask, why did working on you have to wait until everybody else was handled? Why does everybody else receive these like full service versions of you, while you receive kind of like whatever scraps are left over? And this is why changing your drinking is rarely about changing your drinking, right? The alcohol is often sitting inside of a much larger pattern. The idea that like I come last. Everybody else's comfort comes first. Once everyone else is taken care of, I'll handle myself then, right? I don't ask for much. I handle things myself. I shouldn't need help. I don't want to burden anyone. I'll care for everyone else, and then I'll drink to survive the exhaustion of caring for everyone else. And this arrangement will keep your household running for sure, but it will run you into the ground. I've seen it. I've been there. This is the truth. And, when your body starts waving that like white flag, your sleep is destroyed, your anxiety is just escalating, your mood is collapsing, your blood work is scary, your relationships are suffering, you still say, what is the cheapest option for me? And an app may be useful, right? An $8 app may be useful, and medication prescribed by your doctor that your insurance covers might be useful. Therapy could be helpful. Peer support could be helpful. There's so many like legitimate pathways, but most women need a combination of things. So you know, um, the real question isn't like, what's the cheapest thing I can try? The question is, what level of care actually matches what's happening in my life? Or what level of care do I deserve? given the level of care that I've offered to everybody else. If alcohol is affecting you every day, you might need support that exists in your real life daily, certainly more than once or twice a week, right? It's happening. Your relationship with alcohol isn't happening for 50 minutes on a Tuesday afternoon, right? It's happening at 5:30. It's happening maybe earlier when you start negotiating. 5:30 when you pour your first drink. 6 or 6:30 when you pour your second. It's happening after that argument with your husband. It's happening when your mother calls. It's happening when you were alone, when you're overwhelmed, restless, bored, angry, or desperate to switch off your brain. You don't only need insight into why you drink. You need a way to live through the moments that you would normally be drinking. You need to, learn what your patterns are while those things are happening. Safety net, guidance, accountability, people who understand the very strange juxtaposition of having a very, very good life and treating yourself super poorly inside of it. That is a very specific kind of pain. The career is good, marriage is fine, house is beautiful, vacations are lovely, children are great, but alcohol is eroding your health, your peace, your confidence, your relationships. And you don't have to diminish everything in your life to admit that this like one part is hurting you. But you also don't have to wait for your life to like totally fall apart before you start to mend this one part. And like, please, like, if nothing else, just like listen to this. You don't have to. Most women already have by the time they talk to me. So this is for the the women who haven't, but you don't have to repeatedly fail with inadequate support before you are permitted to seek meaningful, productive support. By the time women reach me, they are like, did the apps, did the books, did the alone thing, not going to AA, tried therapy, like nothing works, like tell me what to do. I want to work with you. I want in, right? Those women have failed so many times. You, dear listener, if you're listening for the first time, you don't necessarily have to go through that before you find good help. You don't, you know, you don't have to lose more time. You have to lose another year. You don't have to become like easier to diagnose, or you don't have to be like sicker for people to take you seriously. Like none of that. High functioning women um, are so often set up for failure because we still look capable. People we assume I'm smart, I'll figure it out. And intelligence doesn't undo conditioning just like that. um Success isn't like, it doesn't erase our pain. um Knowing better doesn't automatically give you the skills of doing better, right? Especially when your brain has spent years equating alcohol to relief. um you're I'm yeah, I could go on and on about this, but I'm not saying every woman should spend money like she doesn't have or whatever, but uh I am saying we need to tell the truth about what we can and cannot afford, right? And sometimes like I can't afford it, or I can't do that, is absolutely true. Sometimes it means I haven't decided that I'm worth rearranging anything for. Sometimes it means my family is accustomed to my needs being optional. Sometimes it's I have grown accustomed to my needs being optional. Super common. Sometimes it means if I invest in real support and it works, I'll have to become a different version of myself. And that is terrifying. All of these are true, but if alcohol has been receiving your money, your evenings, your sleep, your mental bandwidth, your health, your confidence, pieces of your relationships, then please stop pretending that like doing nothing is free, or that $8 a month or a book is going to repair the complexities that alcohol has impacted on in your life. You know, doing nothing or doing very little isn't free. Um, it has a cost. The women I work with know this. So before anyone thinks that I'm standing on like a very like expensive healthcare soapbox, there's like research, there's psychology behind why women do this. And the research, it doesn't show that women spend less money on healthcare than men. In many settings, women actually use more healthcare services, but using healthcare and investing meaningfully in your own care are not necessarily the same thing. A woman, for example, may attend her physical, get her mammogram, fill her prescriptions, take care of the obvious, medical necessities while continuing to postpone the deeper support she needs for her mental health, her relationship with alcohol, her stress, the patterns that are just kind of like slowly grinding her into dust. The research does show that women disproportionately carry unpaid caregiving responsibilities. They experience greater caregiver strain, and they often subordinate their own needs to preserve relationships and keep their households functioning. Um, Canadian data reflects this. Statistics Canada has found that many women are more likely than men to provide unpaid care, and they're more likely to take on emotionally and physically intensive parts of caregiving. So women aren't simply caring more, they are like carrying more. And when you repeatedly practice putting everybody else first, self neglect can feel like virtuous. It can feel just very normal. It can feel responsible. Um, spending money on kids feels necessary, and on the house feels practical, and spending money to help your aging parents feels like a non-negotiable. But spending money on your own mental and physical health, it can trigger guilt. It can trigger shame, right? Feelings of unworthiness. Psychologists sometimes describe this through concepts like self-silencing and self-sacrifice, which is just like suppressing your own needs to preserve relationships, to avoid conflict, to continue being seen as the dependable one. And after doing years of that, you might not even recognize it as self-abandonment. It becomes sensible. It's duty, right? You're low maintenance. You call it putting your family first. You call it, I need to talk to my husband. And meanwhile, your health is deteriorating and you're still trying to make sure nobody else is getting inconvenienced by your need to get better. And there's also something called loss aversion. Behavioral research shows that people tend to feel the pain of losing money more strongly than they feel the potential benefit of what the money could create. So spending thousands of dollars on support feels like an immediate like loss. But the future cost of continuing to drink, that feels very vague, right? That's like somewhere down the road. It's like another bad night. It's like eventually, your liver will go kaput. Um, another year of discomfort. Um, and those costs are real, but because they like are accumulating gradually, they don't always feel as urgent as seeing a large charge appear on your credit card like today. So, that's something to consider. And then there's also psychologists call it like the status quo bias. So human beings tend to favor what is familiar, even when the familiar thing is hurting us. So continuing to spend 20 or $30 on alcohol several times a week doesn't feel like a major financial decision because it's part of this like existing routine. But investing in meaningful support feels enormous because it requires an active decision. It represents change. It represents commitment. It represents a deviation from the norm. And it removes that comforting little fantasy that like maybe somehow this will, eventually fix itself. So when a woman says, I need to think about the money, um, before investing in herself, sometimes she genuinely needs to think about the money, but sometimes her brain is responding exactly as brains respond when we are asked to leave a familiar pattern, tolerate an immediate cost, and prioritize ourselves in a way that we may never have done before. And it doesn't make her stupid or cheap, but she does need to recognize what is happening, because there's a tremendous difference between being financially responsible and consistently choosing the least expensive, least disruptive, least supported version of care for yourself. And the cheapest option isn't necessarily the most responsible option, especially if it's not actually helping you change. Waiting has a price. Continuing has a price. Waiting, trying another unsupported Monday morning promise has a price. And if the drinking continues to affect your physical and mental health, that price tends to increase. And alcohol has already cost you plenty. You don't need to let your reluctance to invest in yourself make it cost more, right? Your health, it's not an indulgence, it's not a luxury. You are not you're not like a miscellaneous expense in your family budget. You do not have to earn the right to receive meaningful support by getting more sick first. So stop looking for the smallest amount of care that you can survive on. Ask yourself what you would want for your daughter. What would you insist on for someone that you love? Then consider the radical possibility that your life deserves the same level of concern. You've spent enough time and energy and money trying to feel better for a few hours. It might be time to invest in something that helps you actually get better forever. So I'll go ahead and just plug my masterclass. It wasn't the point of this, but I'm going to do it anyways. If you're a high functioning woman who is ready to stop trying to solve this alone, watch my free masterclass. It's linked in the show notes. And I'll show you why rules, willpower, and the repeated attempts to just like cut back haven't created lasting change, and what it looks like to address the patterns underneath your drinking instead. And if the masterclass resonates with you, book a call with me. Let's chat about having you join us potentially. So link is in the show notes. Thank you for listening to another episode of Recovering from Everything, a podcast for everyone who's ever had anything happen to them ever, including spending a ton of money harming myself and then wondering how I can fix myself without spending a ton of money. It happens. We're out there. All right. I love you. I'll see you soon.